Beverley, in many ways a wheatbelt town like any other. But this little town is home to a big secret.
You think about an aeroplane flying back then was a big thing anyway, let alone something that was built in the hometown that they all lived. That was his life, that's what he loved doing.
Selby Avon Ford was born in Beverley in 1900. As a youngster, he showed little aptitude for formal schooling, but a natural flair for anything electrical or mechanical.
There was a story that he'd invented a television set before television was even created, which was quite interesting.
But it wasn't until 1928 that Ford's two clever hands and brilliant mind conspired to create history. With virtually no knowledge of aeronautical engineering, he would design and construct the state's first privately built aeroplane. With the assistance of good friend Tom Shackles, the local butcher, Ford began by marking out a plan in chalk on the powerhouse floor. These were the only plans he ever used. On July the 1st, 1930, the Silver Centenary, named for the centenary of Western Australia the year before, was ready for her inaugural flight.
That was a big day for Beverley. You know, they tell me that the town virtually stopped and school kids were let off school for the day.
As a lad, neighbour Walter Swan had watched from the outset as wood, fire and fabric were transformed into the state's first privately built aircraft.
They wheeled it out of the old powerhouse. And down here there used to be a creek with a little bridge over it and high rails. And they couldn't get it over that because the wings would have hit the rails. So they manhandled it over there.
Test pilot Captain Charles H. Nesbitt from Western Air Services climbed into the cockpit, taxied up and down a few times and took off. After half an hour he landed, declaring the Silver Centenary was as safe as a church. 3 days later, the Silver Centenary was flown to Maylands in Perth to a tumultuous welcome. But the celebrations were short-lived. Without blueprints and comprehensive technical specifications, the authorities could not issue Ford with an airworthiness certificate.
I think they'd made up their mind that he wasn't going to be able to fly this aeroplane as he wanted to.
Despite a year and a half of faultless flying, despite accolades of all kinds from professional pilots of the day, including the celebrated aviator Amy Johnson, the Silver Centenary was grounded permanently. Ford's hopes of a flying future were dashed forever.
He's hung it in the roof of his powerhouse for 40 odd years. Every day, looking at it, probably thinking, gee, I'd love to be flying that today. And he wasn't able to because the regulators got in the way.
The Centenary was mothballed in 1933, but the town refused to allow Ford's legacy to be forgotten. A museum was opened in 1967 and the Silver Centenary took pride of place among the displays.
The town's very, very proud of, and it's even on our crest. They're very proud of the plane and the fact that it was here.
And here it remained for nearly 40 years, until another enterprising member of Ford's family had an idea of his own. Rod Edwards is Selby Ford's maternal grandson. He is himself a pilot and the legal owner of the Silver Centenary.
I guess the pressure was going to come to have to restore it in some form. And I guess over time I got it in my mind that perhaps we could go all the way.
Before he could commence his ambitious project, however, Edwards had to escape Beverley with the aircraft and his personal well-being intact.
I was a bit nervous about how the town of Beverley, the folk of Beverley would treat me. I was the villain that was removing their aeroplane.
The town wasn't very happy about it going, I must admit.
The question was, could he actually get this 90-year-old home-built museum piece back in the air safely? To improve his chances, Edwards enlisted some professional help in the form of aircraft builder and restorer Rob Felton.
We started with the tail, and that went quite successfully. We made good progress with that, and then we just moved on to the next part of the aeroplane. And we really didn't know what we'd bitten off. I think at that time it was obviously in need of a lot of work and a lot of restoration.
Was there a moment when you went, this is going to work?
Well, there was a few moments I thought it wasn't. I think when we put the wings on, that was a big day for the family. A few of us were down here and Robbie and I celebrated that day because we felt it looked like an aeroplane again.
Given the years that he did it, in 1929, it was remarkable that, he followed what was pretty well aviation practice.
Work had begun in February 2006. By August of the following year, the fully restored, rebuilt and reborn Silver Centenary was finished and ready for her second inaugural flight, nearly 77 years after her first.
Throttle cracked.
Throttle cracked. Contact.
There was probably a million things that could have gone wrong that first day. It was probably the scariest day of my life. When I actually lifted off, I think I called for Selby a bit, I think. He was with me that first flight and I was asking for him, Yeah, it was pretty emotional. Yeah, I'd hope he'd be proud.
The flight was perfect, and for a man who had dreamed of this one moment for so long and put in so much physical and mental effort, exhausting.
Absolutely amazing. I think I cried, but and I pulled up and they're all clapping and cheering and everything, but I was beat. I got out there and I was beat. I said to Rob, you taxi it home. I can't do it anymore. I'm done for the day.
Thanks to her painstaking restoration, the Silver Centenary is once again living history and likely to stay that way for years to come.
My kids are already lined up a pilot's seat as well, so it might go down another generation, so I heard the other day.
But Rod Edwards is also keen to see that the Silver Centenary enjoys a little more of the spotlight than she did when she first took to the air in 1930.
And there's a lot of people that don't know about the history of this aeroplane and my grandfather and what he'd achieved.
And Edwards is hoping that process will begin at the beginning back in Beverley.
That'll be one of the first things we'll do, and I owe that to the town and I owe it to Selby and I owe it to the Silver Centenary.
They're tickle pink now that he has actually got it going, and we're hoping in the future he will fly it down and do a few circuits of the town.
I have a shot of it flying between Beverley and York, an air-to-air shot, and I really want to reproduce that one. That would look magnificent.